Recording in progress.
Good afternoon. This afternoon's special meeting of the Marysville City Council, please come to order. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Belza. Councilmember Gilchrist.
Here.
Councilmember Hudson.
Here.
Vice Mayor Betticavoli. And Mayor Branscombe.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda?
Not this afternoon, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. And I see you have something to share.
I do. Thank you. After the closed session, the City Council will leave the council chambers and the meeting will be adjourned by operation of law due to lack of a quorum. If there is any reportable closed session action, a report will be made at the beginning of the next regular council meeting. I ask that after the closed session item descriptions are read by the mayor, that all members of council, applicable consultants, and staff join the closed session meeting. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have anyone online?
We have one person online, Mayor.
Okay, does that then I will read this. We have one person online. If you'd like to speak, raise your hand and you will be recognized. That would be a good time to do that would be right now. Noting no one in the gallery and no one online looking to speak. We will be going into closed session to deal with two matters. The first matter pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, conference with labor negotiators Jim Shad and Patrick Clark regarding the following bargaining units. 1, Teamsters. 2, Marysville Police Officers Association, sworn and non-sworn. And 3, the Marysville Firefighter Association. Second matter that will be discussed in closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8, that will be conference with real property negotiators Brent Bordson and Jim Shad regarding property owned by the city at 429 10th Street, Marysville. Negotiating parties are Yuba County Office of Education, along with the city under negotiation price and terms. We will now enter into closed session. This meeting's adjourned.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Lost my glasses again. If this evening's meeting of the Marysville City Council, please come to order. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Councilmember Belzak,
Here.
Councilmember Gilchrist,
Here.
Councilmember Hudson,
Here.
Vice Mayor Bettacavoli,
Here.
and Mayor Branscombe.
Thank you, ma'am. Here. Everybody, please stand and join in the pledge. States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Make sure the damn phone is on. Yes. Sure. Okay, here we go. Madam Clerk, any changes to the agenda, please?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The item that was in the appeal for a public hearing for tow contracts will be heard and presented to council at
What number is that?
It will be heard at the September 5th council meeting. It's not on tonight's agenda. It was published as it was, but it's being moved to the 5th.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. City Attorney, anything to report on closed session?
There is nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to move now to the Community and Consent Calendar Forum. And I've got a paragraph I need to read here. Individuals wishing to address the City Council concerning consent calendar items or on matters not already on the agenda do we have any members of the public wishing to comment at this time?
We do. Thank you, Mayor. Our first speaker will be Mark Carroll.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Honorable Council. My name is Mark Carroll. I'm here as the Marysville Peace Officers Association President. Am I holding it close enough?
No, you're doing great.
All right. I am also a resident of Marysville. I won't say exactly where I live. You can imagine why.
I don't tell people either.
However, I am here to represent our 25 members of the Marysville Peace Officers Association. As you are probably aware by now, on Thursday, August 10th, the association voted unanimously not to accept the contract negotiations offer. Just some background from our perspective. We initially held a meeting regarding the negotiations when it all first started, and the MPOA officers asked the young officers, the members, and the dispatchers, et cetera, think of ways outside of the box. And we are not going to be the type that happens so many times to come up and say, oh, I want a 30% raise and something absolutely ridiculous. So we asked them to think of ways that wouldn't be financially detrimental for our city. Couldn't be any more proud of them. Mind you, our salary survey shows us patrol staff 27% behind and dispatch 47% behind the average in the area. I couldn't be more proud of them because they brainstormed, and it was not like any other experience that I've had as a part of an association, a law enforcement association. The young members, they proved that they were not going to be the greedy type, give me, as has happened so many times. This, I think, is the sign of the quality of the members and the employees that we have here in Marysville. I also believe this is a very good reflection of our command staff because they have created an atmosphere to where our association is not confrontational, and they were easily made up their own minds to think of other things rather than gimme. In my previous experience, usually younger members will go for a high raise and then use Marysville as a training ground, and they go somewhere else. These young members actually were thinking of retirement. They were thinking of other things outside of the box. And I know I can't be specific, so I'm going to keep it vague. These are the same members that, if you haven't seen lately in any broadcasts or any Facebook posts, these are the same members that are young in their career, yet they develop leads for when there's no leads to easily develop. For example, broken windows in our local area. The officers involved chased down, identified suspects, and we're obviously going to deal with that. They're the same members that are called to a local watering hole when bouncers are threatened and the victims don't want to press charges, but they find other lawful means to make arrests and deal with the people that were victimizing our local employees, the people that live in our city. They're the same officers that are putting in, the same people, that are putting in an average of 921 overtime hours on top of their work schedules that have families, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on and on. I'm very proud of our membership, and it goes all the way from animal control to our CSOs, to our dispatchers, to our patrol officers. From our view, there's a crisis in the PD. I don't want to take away from anybody else or any other bargaining units, but we're not better, we're different. These, right now, everybody knows it's not popular to be in law enforcement. Academies aren't putting out the numbers and the volume of cadets that they used to, and they're getting approached by local agencies that are paying up to 20% more. The academies used to, back in my day, put out 30 to 40 people at a time. And now we're lucky to see, I've been to the last 2 graduations for people, and there's 15, 20 people. And then they get approached by local law enforcement agencies that pay more. Well, why would they pick us? We do have a very good recruitment incentive, but what happens after that? These are the same people, no matter what position you hold here at the police department, that are constantly being called racists, we're harassing people for doing our job. We don't care. And so on, that you see all over posted on Facebook. Yet we're trying to do what's right for our city. They're constantly getting screamed at, threatened, attacked. So we're not better, we're different. So the question that I have is, why stay at MPD? The recruitment's great, but what about maintaining what we have? They could go across the river or go across the street, literally, and get paid more. Again, why stay in dispatch? I do cover dispatchers, and it's the most frustrating part of the job is, one, you can't go out and handle and help because you're stuck there because I'm covering dispatch to help them, to relieve them to go to the bathroom or something like that. But then you have people on the phone just screaming and hollering at you. But why stay there when you can go to In-N-Out and make $1.37 less an hour than some of our dispatchers. In our view, the current offer doesn't retain personnel. We're currently losing one to another local agency, and we already just this year lost one to a local agency. We just brainstormed, and the people that we can name was 21 people in the last 5 years. 21 members have gone to other agencies. So we're losing people. We feel like there's a crisis. We still have 2 open slots that aren't filled. Do you want MPD to be a training ground? Because that's what they're doing. And we put out great officers in my mind. I think from the command staff down to the sergeants, we're training them. They get a lot of experience. If I was at another agency, I would suck up an MPD officer in a heartbeat, or even one of our dispatchers. And then you got to think about the cost of the recruitment. How much are we losing in putting out the recruiting team, putting out recruiting bonuses, doing backgrounds, the hiring process, the uniforms, and then the FTO process, just for someone to go to another local agency before he's even off probation, because that's the boat we're in. So that was the conclusion, is do we want it to still be a training ground? I really thank you for letting me speak. I thank you for your time. And that's
It's Sergeant Carroll, isn't it?
What's that, sir?
Sergeant Carroll, all right.
Well, I'm here as the POA president.
I understand that, but you're Sergeant Carroll. That's how I know you.
Yes,
You're an excellent advocate.
I appreciate
Heard
that,
every
sir.
word, and the 3-minute thing didn't matter.
I was
Thank you.
hurrying.
Oh, no, it didn't matter. I mean, that's a warning to everybody else. It does matter most of the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
No further speakers, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we now move to the consent calendar, moving right along. And all matters on the consent agenda are considered routine and therefore approved by one motion, unless a council member or the city manager first requests that a matter be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. What is the will of the council?
Through the chair,
Sir,
I will have to abstain just because of one minor detail on an item here, just for information.
you're going to abstain? Okay.
I make a motion to approve.
We have a motion
Oh, second.
and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
That's the 4 voting members. Aye. Thank you. Okay, we now move to item number 10, and that's on the discussion and action calendar. And before I get to it, I have another paragraph to read. All matters on this section of the agenda are discussed and will be acted on individually. Members of the public may request to speak on any of these items for up to 3 minutes when called upon for public comment. And again, if you'd like to speak, speaker's card from the city clerk, and you'll be recognized in due course. If you're online, you can raise your hand and again be recognized in due course. If you have any documentation you'd like to be distributed to council, mail it to City Clerk, 526 C Street, Marysville, 95901. Okay. The first item and the matter of progression here is the items presented, then we have public comment, and then we have discussion amongst council. The first matter is a matter I suggested last week, and what happens is the Wednesday before a Tuesday council meeting, so most of a week in advance, I gather with the city manager, city clerk, and others, and work out the agenda and look at it and put it together. And I suggested this item is item number 1. Now, this deals with Ellis Lake. A little background. When I was a brand new baby mayor in late 2020, early 21, I attended a meeting with the with the water agency people. And I think you were already on board then, weren't you? I think our city manager was just freshly on board then, and the vice mayor and I were both at this meeting. And the water agency had been pursuing, they're as interested in the Ellis Lake as we are. At least they show a significant amount of interest, and we're fortunate they do. And they had engaged a consultant group that had some ideas. And we tried one of those ideas, the one that made the most sense. And we were funded by the agency to do that work. It was a matter of removing carp and treating the water, which is laden with phosphates. It's well water feeds the lake right now. Well water is heavy in phosphates. And look at the next time you buy a box or package of fertilizer for your home garden, you will see phosphates. It is a fertilizer. So when you have growth in warm water and you're adding fertilizer to it, you're going to get more. And we treated, and we did get some initial good results, but they were not enduring. They're not the kind of results that we could count on long-term, even if we cycled on a regular basis. So we fell back, and once we get into discussion on this amongst council and everything, city manager has been, Mr. Jim Shedd has been spending a lot of time looking at remediation matters because he lives on a lake in the foothills and they have the same kind of problems and they're dealing with it, and he's learning things there. And we've learned from the mistakes, or the, I should say, less than optimum approach that was taken, but it was an approach taken, recommended by experts. And now we have fallen back to a position where it's going to take fresh water. More likely than not, it will take fresh water from the Yuba River flowing through the city system. First of all, getting it out of the river, across or through the levee, into the city system and delivered to the lake. Because circulation is the best cure for less than pure water. So there we are. We've been focused on that. In the meantime, the lake is, and we've been doing planning. Oh, in June, this is very important. In June, we had worked out a deal. The city had actually, the city had negotiated with the water agency. We had $30,000 left on the $180,000 grant they'd given us to do the first try. And we wanted to rededicate that money to planning for water and also planning for the environment around the lake. And the city council wisely, very wisely, added $150,000 of city general fund money to that endeavor. And that endeavor will be spoken to later. So that's in the works, but in the meantime, the city, the lake has gone downhill. A few weeks ago, I suggested to our city manager that we get on it, and I understand that it takes special permits to apply the material to clear it up, and finding the people who are available now to do that is a challenge. And so that's where we sit. We've got, it's terrible. We've got 80,000 and focus on traffic, the hotel, and the lake. They're all a challenge, and it took a long time to get where they are, and here we are. But the situation with the lake now is urgent. In my own mind, I think, again, we've got the 80,000 people driving through. That's 80,000 eyeballs of strangers, not people who don't live here, passing through Marysville, taking a look at the lake and thinking, Why would I want to live there? Why would I? It's not a good sign. It makes us look like an unhealthy city. And we need to do something immediately and dedicate ourselves while we're looking for the long-term solution to a series or whatever is necessary in terms of shorter-term solutions to keep that lake from, well, we don't want to embarrass the city because the city's, I mean, we don't want to embarrass the residents. City, the council and city management are responsible to make things right. And we absolutely have to do something. In my own mind, and I shared this with city manager this morning, if we have to hire a full-time equivalent just to take care of the lake and be on it every day, let's do that. He's more efficient than I am. I'll use a sledgehammer, but whatever it takes, that is a centerpiece of what we hope to do with an important part, is the centerpiece for what we hope to do with a significant portion of the city. Bryant Field, across the street, the grocery, Chipotle, and we might get some very exciting news on the hotel within days. In fact, I'd expect it within. And we want that lake to be a magnet, not something that causes people to worry and look the other way. So there's the discussion. I presented this matter because I wanted to provide some background. I know a lot of folks are interested in this. I'm not trying to make excuses. I hope I just laid out facts. If it sounded like I was making excuses, I was just trying to lay out the chronology and where we're at and what our attitude is. I think it's the right attitude. Before we move to the council and city manager discussion on this, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone who'd like to comment on this?
We do. Thank you, Mayor. Our first speaker will be Donna Wahlberg.
Hello. I just want to thank you for the passion that I heard in your voice about our lake, because I've been as concerned as you are. In fact, we've been going out there several times a week and just trying to remove some of the garbage and scum that's accumulated. And it's just too massive for a couple of people to do. It has to be a sustained effort. I like your idea of maybe having someone committed to, you know, a consistent maintenance of the lake. Just wanted to comment. I'm very, very happy to hear that this is important to you. It sounds like it is important to me, not only for how it makes our city appear, but also it is just such a wonderful asset that our community could enjoy. I mean, there are steps leading down into the water. I'd like to see the water so fresh that people could actually have a swimming area like they have at Bidwell Park in Chico, you know, and there's just so many possibilities that we're all missing out on. And so I just thank you. And I'll be listening and helping in any way I can. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Madam Clerk.
No further speakers, Mayor.
And again, I'd like everybody to know that time for public comment is closed. I'm certain I'm speaking for the rest of my comments. I was speaking in tune with my colleagues on the council. Mr. Vice Mayor, I'd like to comment.
I just want to reiterate your comments as the council's dedication to this. It seems publicly like nothing is being done. It's obviously getting worse, we know. I have been involved with the Yuba-Sutter agency in this group now for, I believe, 5 years. And in 5 years, we are just now getting to a place where we can get some cost estimates put together to try to do something that's beyond just sufficient, but to do the job that we all want to see happen with that lake. It's hard to keep getting comments from people that don't understand or don't want to accept the processes that we've been going through. And I want to give a couple quick examples of that. A few years ago, we were offered some money to fix a pump and down in the river, which was very generous. But the reality was the pump was not even in the river channel anymore. So it didn't matter if it worked or not. So we denied that for the purpose of not wasting money. Then we've looked in further. We used to pump the water through the storm drain system. The state does not allow you to run through the storm drain system anymore. Explanation of why this is so expensive because of permitting, dedicated lines, moving the pumps. So I guess my point just is, from being within the water committee, the lake committee with the Yuba Water Agency, is as bad as the lake looks, as much as people think we aren't doing anything, or again, at least the past 5 years that I've been engaged with this committee and the agency, things are getting done at a snail's pace, which is usually what it comes to with when you're working in the public industry. But we're taking it way more serious, and we've gone way deeper than most people would have ever expected that we have. And even after the 5 years, we are making progress on it. Thanks.
And with the council's approval, our city manager asked to speak at this point. Is that okay with everybody? Please, Jim.
Okay. This may take a bit, just to forewarn everybody.
Our city manager is thorough.
So I haven't been a little less than 2.5 years. Haven't been working on this for 5 years, but pretty much started looking at Ellis Lake the day I got here. With exceptional support from council, staff and I have worked on multiple priorities. As an example, the mayor mentioned our B Street property, which is moving forward. Repaving of several streets, which is going to be happening within the next month. Rehabilitation of Bryant Field. All those things were priorities for our council, and we've been delivering those. Ellis Lake has also been a priority, but frankly, one of the more complex issues that we have, because it's a lake. It's a body of water with stuff growing in it. So it's represented a bigger challenge. But this is on the top of mine and my staff's priority list for this fiscal year. And that's based on the desires of our council. So what is happening with Ellis Lake? I committed in a meeting ago, I believe, that we would do a scientific, systematic analysis of the lake, which would provide a plan to improve the water quality. And I say a plan because we've had quite a bit of studies done on the lake, but I don't think we've had a plan on what to do now that we know what the issues are with the lake. The big issue is phosphorus. That is great food for algae. And so lots of phosphorus in the lake water coming from the well. Feeds the algae, particularly in the summer. In the winter, when we get fresh water from rainfall, things tend to clear up and it's cooler, so the algae grows less. So that's one of the biggest problems. Circulation and oxygenation are the other problems that previous consultants identified. No no fault of the consultants, but those consultants did not come up with a plan on what to do next. So in that meeting, I think it was the last meeting we had or the one before, I recommend to hire a consultant, Dan Bergman with IGS Services, so he can put together that plan. Dan is not necessarily a water expert, but he is an expert on pulling all the resources together and coming up with a plan. He's done that on other items for the city and has done an excellent job. He has started digging into this thing and really started coming up with some answers. In parallel to that, one of the problems we had was getting information on phosphorus levels in a timely manner. We've enlisted a local test lab, certified ag labs, and they have began testing for phosphorus. They can turn those test results around in days rather than weeks or months. So very important, so we can monitor the phosphorus levels and react to those in a more real-time basis. The first readings, we've taken 2 sets of readings with certified ag labs. The readings have been very high in phosphorus in the lake, but we've taken 1 reading of the water coming out of the well, and the first initial reading, it appears that well water is just as high in phosphorus, if not higher than the water in the lake. So anytime we're pumping new water into the lake, particularly in summer, when it's evaporating, we're just introducing more food for algae. So right now it's looking pretty grim for well water, just initially speaking. We can treat well water. So we have some options. We can treat the well water, or we can get what is pretty well phosphate-free water from the river. Treatment of the well water is likely going to be much more expensive on an ongoing basis. Bringing water in from the river is likely much more expensive up front with the capital investment. But I've committed to looking at both, and Dan Bergman is looking at both and going to come up with the cost and the regulatory issues with both alternatives. He has now reviewed the sites, the river pump site, potential new pump site, potential pipeline pass, and lake inlets and outlets. He's reviewed began reviewing all the past data and studies on the lake. He's consulted with our city engineer, John Mallon at MHM, and our public works staff to get as much history on this as possible. He'll be consulting with more. Just today, he consulted, as the mayor mentioned, with a company that does lake water quality management for a living, and as the mayor mentioned, works with the folks at Lake Wildwood in Penn Valley to manage their lake, which, by the way, they have very similar problems. He is continuing to gather information on the river option. His initial observations were the pump apparatus at the original site is old and would likely need to be replaced. The pump obviously doesn't reach into the river where it used to, and so would have to be relocated. The PG&E service is completely gone, would have to be reestablished. No transmission pipe through the levee anymore. The levee pipe will now have to go over the levee, which would be a cost. He is quite confident that we should likely relocate the location of where the water is drawn from the river, and that would require some property easements, but that looks optimistic. He will be looking at the pros and cons of using a dedicated storm drain line and reconfiguring our storm drain system versus running a new line. And then we still need to make sure we have adequate water rights to pull water from the river. With that, there's a whole bunch of regulatory requirements that have to be done or addressed too. Operational costs for getting water out of the river is going to be basically the electricity and maintenance for the pump. With getting it from the well, it's the electricity from the pump plus any treatment requirements to get the phosphorus out of the water. Speaking of well water, he's, as I mentioned, reviewed the initial phosphorus test levels and looking at what the best treatment methodology would be. So that could be broadcasting chemical on the surface of the lake or treating it by injecting it at the pump to eliminate it before it goes into the lake. Also, what type of materials? Everybody's probably heard of Phoslock. That's one option. Another option has been a chemical called alum, but that may not be allowable based on environmental issues. And then algicide treatment, which I'll talk a little bit about algicide treatment in a minute. The initial review of the phosphate levels indicates that the treatment costs to remove the phosphates will be fairly high. An estimate just on pumping water continuously through the lake, rough estimate, possibly $150,000 a year, regardless of where we pump it from. We still do not know what the optimal turnover of water should be. We know that we should circulate water through the lake, but how much would be sufficient? And the more we circulate, the more it costs because, in electricity and potentially treatment chemicals. He's also looking at the rate of evaporation or just loss due to evaporation and percolation, because that's an important part of the equation. All of that information will allow us to develop costs for both alternatives. One for the pulling of water from the river, the other from continuing to use the well, both capital cost and operational cost. And I have given him access to our city engineers, MHM, to help with any of those engineering and technical questions that he may have. He is an engineer in his own right, but our city engineer, as Mr. Nicoletti has pointed out in other discussions, knows more about city infrastructure than the city staff does at this point. So he will also have access to environmental and regulatory consultants so that he can quickly gather information on what it's going to take regulation wise. So I anticipate, based on the pace he's working, he will have some solid answers on the feasibility of well water before the next council meeting. It will take him a little bit longer to determine the river water because of the capital costs that need to be calculated, as well as the regulatory requirements. A few other items I mentioned: we don't know what the lake water turnover should be. It needs to be more than it is. I'm convinced of that. It's a 31-acre lake, fairly shallow. That shallow feature keeps the lake fairly warm, particularly in the summer, and promotes algae growth. It's not like a large lake where the depth helps keep things cool. So it will likely take more than just pumping more water out into the lake and circulating it. I would not be surprised if we still have to do some treatment, whether that be algicide or some type of chemical, to manage the lake. The That being said, we will be doing some remedial treatment of the lake. And that will be an algicide treatment, most likely.
That's near term.
Yes.
Thank you.
Probably within the next 2 weeks. We've had some difficulty finding somebody to do that. As the mayor mentioned, there are special licenses required. But Dan has been in contact with the folks that do Lake Wildwood, and it looks like they'll be able to get down there, and they owe me a quote for that. So that will probably help short-term knock some of the growth down in the lake, but it is not a long-term solution. That same company does lake management, and so Mr. Bergman will be talking to them about what it would take to possibly enlist their services for a more permanent type of arrangement. And that will probably be a recommendation I have in upcoming council meetings, is to get somebody on board, if it's a reasonable cost, to help with the management of treatment of the lake. So that's where we're at with the lake. I know it's disappointing to see the lake in the condition it is in. As I mentioned, it's not an organism, but it's full of growing, moving organisms, and it's not as simple as a ballpark or a street to resolve. So we will continue at it, and I am confident we'll come up with a solution. The next challenge will be funding the solution. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else from the council for comments or questions?
I wouldn't have anything to say other than what you've already communicated, that we're all on board to find the solution to this. And I think under this direction, we will. So.
And indeed, there's a focus on the short term. Let's get that eyesore remediated as quickly as possible, as thoroughly as possible. The long-term planning, as Vice Mayor has mentioned and Mr. Shedd has mentioned, has been ongoing. And we have added, the city has added significant funding to that planning. And there is a particular agency that we're familiar with who has an interest in the lake. And there's been no commitments, but I've been in a meeting where senior members of that organization have been thrilled with the leadership that Mr. Shedd has taken on the lake. And so it's encouraging. It's very encouraging. And thank you. I think we'll move on now. Oh, speak.
I would like to mention one subject, which short term, and I don't know if it's too soon to discuss this, but there is a group of people that is in the House today that signed up for one of our first, or one of the biggest. I think Councilman Belza brought up a need for adopt-a-park programs. So we implemented an adopt-a-park program in the city of Marysville. And one of the largest groups is in the House with us now. And I believe they were able to clean Ellis Lake last Saturday. And you picked up how many bags of trash? And the
environment.
The environment, the landscape itself looks awesome. Thank you. Yeah. You should, because this never gets to happen. Yeah. You know, you did an outstanding job. You are augmenting our public works department, which is fantastic. You know, this is all new. So thank you for growing with us. So that's the temporary solution, which won't always be temporary because the public really knows more about their own parks than anyone else. So we encourage you to give us input firsthand. And I think you've done an outstanding job, and thank you. I encourage more people to do the same. Thank you.
I would recommend you stay for the next item as well.
Awesome. Councilman Gilchrist always remembers things that are very important and that I overlook. Bless you all. You did a great job. Okay. Let's see. We now move to item number 11, which also deals with the lake. And then we're going to get to the Cotton Rosser bronze statue. And I'm so happy to see Rosser people here. So, okay. Item number 11, however, is Roach and Campbell Landscape Architects to develop an Ellis Lake master plan. Recommendation: pass a motion to approve a consulting agreement with Roach and Campbell Landscape Architects in the amount of $29,780 to develop an Ellis Lake master plan. And as I understand this is a master plan for the environment around the lake. And Mr. Jim Shad is presenting this matter, sir.
Okay, so this is the second part of Ellis Lake in my mind. The first is water quality, and that is an issue that somewhat stands on its own. But we also have the green space around Ellis Lake. And when I first came here, the water quality was a priority, and what was called an Ellis Lake master plan was priority. It took me a while to really understand what a master plan was, because some people were interested in the immediate green space. Some people were interested in the development farther out, all of the commercial residential development. So tonight we're talking about the green space, and that's the master plan we're talking about. The development part of it is, in my mind, already being addressed. We've seen the B Street property, Bryant Field work. That stuff is already occurring. I am recommending to council tonight to move forward with a second consulting agreement, roughly $30,000, with Roach and Campbell. They have a representative here, Jessie Lett, and she may want to add some words, answer some questions, but we have utilized Jessie in the past to do our parks master plan, as well as design the Gavin Park that's being constructed right now. And it's being deconstructed right now, but will be constructed in the next few months or few weeks. So what we're looking to do in this is a conceptual overall plan for the green space around Ellis Lake, with the primary goals of providing more functional space for active recreation, and more specifically, walking, running, biking, fishing, those types of activities, as well as special events, weddings, birthday parties, and such, and really enhance the features and potentially expand some of the green space around the lake.
If I may, when you say walking, you mean something wider than the 2.5 foot wide? Thank you.
Yes. And I guess more specifically than that, I asked Jessie to look at a 6-foot walking / biking path around the entire lake. That is one of the major goals in my mind. The lake also has suffered from some deferred maintenance, and we've got some walkways that are in very, very rough condition that would also be addressed in this. I'll probably get the question, why or how do you make the green space larger? And that may mean bringing the banks of the lake in a little bit to get that 6-foot walking path. So this activity that Ms. Lett is going to do will give us an overall plan for the lake. It builds on a partial plan she had worked on for some grants through the state that we were unsuccessful in receiving, but it would set us up for application of additional grants. And I think if we continue with our applications, we will eventually be successful in landing one or more. I did want to mention, I was fortunate enough to get my hard copy of the Appeal Democrat on my desk today, Robert. I read the Ellis Lake article. I did want to clarify, there is a long list of items for potential consideration that I've tasked Roach and Campbell to look at to see if there are options. And we will be doing community outreach and stakeholder discussions as a city. But that list is options to be considered. So please don't take that list as option or things that are definitely going to happen. That's not the intent of it. And that's what my staff report says. The next step, if this is awarded tonight, would be that Jess begins to gather information. She already has some. I will probably be bringing back to council an additional item for a topographic study. If you don't know what that is, that's a three-dimensional modeling of the surroundings of the lake. And that would likely be done by another consultant, but she'll need that work to design the amenities around the lake. And I anticipate bringing that to council next. So that's where we're at. I'm not sure if there are any questions from council, but more than happy to answer them.
Well, the public is, but if Ms. Lett would you mind sharing a few words on would that be appropriate, Jim? Sure. Thank you. A few words. And just give us your outlook on what you plan on doing and whatever you think.
Absolutely. So as Jim mentioned, my name's Jessie Lett. I'm a landscape architect with Roach and Campbell, and I've been doing a lot of the work, a number of different projects here in Marysville over the last 5 years now. The Ellis Lake project is, as everyone has clearly mentioned, central to the work that is being done in Marysville and representative of Marysville. My work on this project is really about being a team player. Like, we have a big team here. All of these people, the community, the city engineer, the work that's being done on the water quality, the neighboring development work that's being done, the ball field, all of this impacts the lake itself and the green space, specifically the green space around the lake. And so this plan, the idea is that we're looking at creating a design that will facilitate, as Jim mentioned, future grant applications and funding opportunities that looks at this context, that brings it all together to create something that's cohesive, something that's compatible with future development, something that's compatible with our current community needs and projected community needs. And so we're anticipating, as Jim mentioned, improvements to the pathways, to the infrastructure, to the site amenities, ensuring that things are functioning and beautiful and resilient long-term for the community.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on this, ma'am?
We do. Thank you, Mayor. The first speaker, I believe first name is Chad Smith.
Welcome, sir.
Hi.
Is it working? Doesn't sound like it.
Turn it off.
Hello.
There you go.
Okay. Chuck Smith, a little bit 5307 7th Street, Marysville. I'm here tonight and to speak in support of this proposal to hire a consultant for this project. And I was very interested in your comments, Mr. Mayor, on the last item regarding this notion of cleaning up Ellis Lake because of its impact that it has on people who come to the community. That was exactly why several years ago they filled in the slough that used to go through Marysville. because we had electric trains coming from Oroville and Chico and bringing people through the community all the way to Sacramento and vice versa. And the business community and the council was upset because people would smell all the stuff that was in the slough when they crossed the rail yards. I want you guys not to get too caught up in the notion that Ellis Lake is in a bad condition on your watch. Ellis Lake has always been a slough, has always been a problem for every council. It's clear from the council records and what you can read in the Appeal Democrat and the old appeals. They used to run daily comments on whether the water quality in the lake that day was whether you should eat the fish if you catch them or not. So this is the lake has been an issue for this community for years, and I appreciate what you're doing on the landscape side. I look forward to the community meetings and the notion of having a large walkway. We can fill in the edges of the lake. Doesn't have to be the size it was today. We didn't make it that way. It's what happened when after we filled in the ends of the slough, the remains of the slough was the lake. And then of course the Depression era Works Project Administration work on the cobblestone. The cobblestone can go away. We don't have to save it. We can improve the lake. I love the 6-foot sidewalk idea. We ought to be able to walk, run, and not have to worry about bicyclists. And there should be a lot of people out there using it, and we shouldn't have to worry about running into it. So thank you for pursuing this project and speaking today in support of approving the proposal.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker will be Anna Schumacher.
Ann. Real estate agent to help me buy my
Hey there.
house.
Am I on?
Yes.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me speak. Yeah, so Ellis Lake, I remember it when I was little. I used to walk home from Notre Dame school and I don't look for duck eggs in the tree, the hollow trees. I swear I brought one home. Anyway, yeah, I tried to hatch it and it didn't, it stunk anyway. But yeah, it has been in poor condition. Well, it was beautiful at one time. I remember just lily pads all around. But anyways, then we got the hydrilla weed, and which was, I don't know, somebody put their their goldfish in there with a plant, and so it just took off like crazy. And I don't know, it was like $1 million to clean that out. And honestly, John Nicoletti was the hydrilla monster because we went to Notre Dame school together and we did a play and he dressed up like the hydrilla monster. I think we were in like 5th, 6th grade, something like that. So I don't know if you knew that history, but I love the idea of a beautiful park there, even if we do have to lose some of the lake. I honestly wish we could just bring a beautiful canal meandering through and just turn the rest of it into a beautiful park, but that's a lot of landfill, I guess you could say. But, I guess one thing, I was in New Hampshire visiting my daughter, and they have like, if you bring your garbage in, you bring it out. I don't know if we need a bunch of garbage cans that everybody, the city has to empty, but kind of have a packet in and a packet out. But anyways, just grateful to be here and have a say. Like I said, I love those canals, that go through Hallwood and all that stuff, and we could just make a little cement bottom canal and kind of have it meander through, and lots of trees and a water parky thing. Okay. I like the idea of a water park, for kids or adults, whatever, just to get wet to stay
San
cool.
Antonio.
I have some pretty big visions. I wish we had a little park over on the other side of the levee there behind the Silver Dollar, kind of like they do there in Yuba City. Anyway, but we're talking about Ellis Lake right now, right? So thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Madam Clerk.
No further speakers, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. to the council. Anybody wish to comment? Questions? Councilman Gilchrist.
I just would like to make a motion.
Well, you can make that motion.
Yeah, I'm going to make a motion to get Jessie going. Hire her now. What is this? Right? Make a motion to. I got to read this officially. Excuse me. It's a big deal.
No, that's fine.
Historically,
Well,
this is
we
a
understand
huge
the motion's
day
been
for
made.
Marysville.
Before we get a second, I'd like to comment on the fact that I've been in business a long, long time and been involved in hiring consultants, and I've never been so confident as I am with the two consultants we have approaching this, one on the lake water and one on the surroundings. And we're very fortunate to have these people engaged. They're proven, and we will get to an answer and on budget, hopefully on time. Do we have a second?
So before I make a motion on the second, I make a small comment, and I'd just like to thank some of the comments that are coming from the community on this particular item. And Mr. Chuck Smith, thank you for saying that, we're not responsible for the issues, but I would like to think that this council is going to move forward and fix many things that are going on. So with that being said, I'd like to put a second on the motion.
And before I call the vote, this is how important that lake is. Once the development on B Street goes in, that development promises, in my view, on the low end, to produce $700,000 a year in tax revenue to the city of Marysville. That's a big deal for the city. And that's the kind of activity. If we can add more activity, that's even better in that neighborhood. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Madam Clerk, that was unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, goody. We now get to item number 12. Here it is. It is the Cotton Rosser Bronze Statue Project. And this will be presented by Mr. Jim Shad, and I understand Catherine Rosser may be assisting him in the presentation. And he'll be calling you forward at the right time. Anyway, the recommendation, pass a motion to 1, approve the placement of a Cotton Rosser bronze statue in a location at Washington Square Park at the northwest corner of 10th and E Street. And 2, authorize the city manager to execute a contract between the city of Marysville and Friends of the Marysville Stampede and artist, Jeff Wolf, concerning the gift of a bronze work of art. And I would add a beautiful bronze and meaningful bronze work of art. Mr. Jim Shad, the floor is yours.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. I got to remember to turn my mic on and off. Anyhow, so I'm hoping that Catherine can come up and speak.
Catherine, come up to the
and help me out here. But this has been a project that has been in the works for, I believe, about 2 years, and started with the Yuba-Sutter Arts Council and some community members and the Rosser family and the Friends of the Marysville Stampede. At this point, the Rossers and the Friends of the Marysville Stampede have really taken the lead on this and have been working to not only raise funds for the project, but also have hired the artist and the landscape architect to situate the statue. We've had numerous discussions about the statue itself and what the presentation around the statue would look like, as well as the location. And through those conversations, the Rossers have selected one of 2 park locations that we had discussed, and that's the Washington Square Park. It would be the northwest corner of that park complex, where there is significant traffic that would see this beautiful statue every day. The agreement that I'm recommending we enter into would allow the Friends of the Marysville Stampede, I got to get that right, to donate the statue to the city. The city would provide the location. Well, and let me back up. Not only are the Rossers so generous to provide the statue, but the base and lighting and all of the things that are required to make this a reality. The city in turn is donating the location, providing the location, as well as is committed to maintaining the artwork and the ancillary items for perpetuity. And so it is a wonderful addition to the community. And I just am excited to approve the agreement or get approval on the agreement and move forward. I will also mention that separate from the items we've discussed earlier with Ms. Lett, I believe she is the landscape architect, not the person who designed the statue, but person that has designed everything else. And she is here tonight. The presentation looks wonderful based on the drawings I've seen. So very excited to do this, and I'm hoping council will approve it tonight. And if you had anything to add, I would more than appreciate
Ms. Catherine Rosser, tell us what you're thinking.
Well, I'd like to start off with one big correction. This program and this project has been in the talks for, I think, over the better part of 10 years. But it started with community members, many of which that are here today. And with that, then came the Yuba-Sutter Arts Council and the different entities that have been involved. But this came from the community of something that they wanted to do. It's no secret that my dad gave a lot to the city of Marysville, to Yuba-Sutter, to put them on the map. And this, in our opinion, is one of the kindest gestures that the city could give back to him for all of those years of service and making Marysville known. You know, a lot of cowboys, it's a heck of a lot easier to live in Texas, and they'd come up to Cotton. I'm from Marysville, California, and I'm proud of it. And our family feels the exact same way. So we are honored just on a familial standpoint to have this here. Sadly, the location and the formation of the committee, we've had a lot of changes. The Rosser family was not even originally involved because the community, it was led by the community for the community. And it wasn't until my dad passed that we got involved to make sure to see it to fruition, because we didn't want this to be another 10, 20 years to see this done. So we stepped in, helped with the fundraising efforts, get that across the line. Through that, there were a lot of unfinished ties with previous committee members, with previous involvement, that led us to change some things. First and foremost, the location. That became a spot that was no longer workable due to cost and due to a number of factors, insuring it. So we had to look for a new home for it. And, you know, I see a lot of the pamphlets and paraphernalia advertising the program, and that's just one of the things that's changed. The second is the Arts Council is no longer involved and is no longer the fiscal sponsor. So through this evolution, we've had a number of changes, but at our core, the Rosser family wanting to say, we want to get this done. That is the single best thing that we can do. So we've stepped in, and with the help of the city, trying to find the ideal location. Now, the tough part with Marysville, my dad always looked at Marysville of what it was and what it could be. And we are too, but we also have to make a choice of where is the best location currently. And for us, we found Washington Square would be the ideal location because of that bridge to Yuba and Sutter. He wasn't just a Marysville man. He was one that was trying to be the PR man and promote people to come over the bridge to Marysville. It's not that scary to pass it, I promise. I do it every day. But by putting him there, that's symbolic of his goal is Yuba and Sutter, we are one. My dad was patriotic through and through. Being able to be in the side of that large American flag, there's a number of aspects there that make it a great location. Now, are there some that could be or would be better in the future? Absolutely. But we're going with the decisions that we have today. And sadly, as I mentioned, it has turned into a political issue. Where people are jockeying for different positions, and we appreciate that. And to me, I choose to look at that rather than political noise as an honor that there are a number of people interested in finding Cotton the right home. But at the end of the day, we're ready to bring Cotton home. And that is the single best thing that we can do here today, is to go ahead and move forward with those plans, because it is not a political topic It is a tribute, and we would be remiss to forget that that is the intent. So we appreciate your consideration on that. But the greatest honor that we can give to my dad, it wasn't, trophies and buckles. We've got a whole store of those at Cotton's Cowboy Corral. And it sure wasn't statues. It was the impact that he left on the lives of everybody that he touched. And so any statue, wherever it may be, would be truly honoring to him, not having expected that. So we appreciate your consideration. And we like keeping the West alive, especially here in Marysville.
And I have just one more thing to add. Selfishly, I'm interested in getting it done. That's kind of my theme, to get things done. And I would rather have a statue somewhere than no statue anywhere. So that is why I'm recommending to council that we approve this tonight.
Well, I got better reasons than that. Come on.
Okay. And that's why you're the mayor and I'm the city manager. But I would highly recommend we move forward with this and execute the plans that have been generated by the Rossers and
the wonderful Jessie Lett. I mean, truly, she has done a fantastic job on multiple sites that we've come up with. So she will be a great fit for you no matter what.
We're very fortunate. Ms. Rosser, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to allow public comment now. Oh, just a moment. Oh, hold it. No, this is all part of the presentation. We're not to public comments yet.
Wonderful. So today, as I mentioned previously, I'm Jessie Lett, landscape architect with Roche and Campbell. And for this project, I'm working with the Friends of the Marysville Stampede Committee on the site plan specifically. Thank you, Nicole. I did want to speak a little bit to the Washington Square Park location in relation to the planning documents that the city's produced in the past.
Perfect.
This siting is in line with the Park and Open Space Master Plan. The Washington Square Park is considered a mini park according to the master plan, and that's because it is less than 3.25 acres. Mini parks are designated for passive use. Passive use in this instance, as opposed to active use like a sports field, passive use would mean things like art and seating. And so this project is in line with the recommendations in the Park and Open Space Master Plan. It's also in line with some of the best practices that we would anticipate for high visibility and safety purposes for the sake of the statue and the improvements. Looking to the design specifically, you can see the image on the right is a zoomed out version that is 10th Street and E Street intersection. And you can see there's sort of a gray triangle that's coming from the statue down the road. That's the visibility, the cone of visibility. And so this statue is oriented so that when you're coming up E Street, you can see directly at Cotton, and it also has the benefit of looking towards Cotton's Cowboy Corral.
Now, isn't it, I'm not supposed to speak here, but isn't it so that Cotton situated like that will be looking directly at the oncoming traffic and waving with his cap?
Absolutely.
I love that.
And actually that image in the lower left corner is approximately where Cotton would be standing. He'll be up a little higher than I was when I took that picture. That's actually his view, that photo in the lower left-hand corner, and that's looking towards E Street, just as you can see. Yeah. And the flag, exactly. Let me just one more point up on the previous one. Thank you. In the upper left corner, you can see that we have a pathway that's connecting into the existing sidewalk. The existing sidewalk shown in gray, that arc on the corner, and then the pathway curves off of that to provide accessibility to Cotton, and it terminates in a seating area at the end of the pathway. Thanks, Nicole. This is a close-up of the statue base. As was mentioned previously, I didn't do the statue. I can take no credit for the statue, the design of it, but I did develop the statue base, and it's a two-tiered brick statue. I did this in collaboration with the artist. Brick base, two 12-inch steps, and then there's two in-ground lights on the face of the base that shine up to light Cotton Rosser up. And so that's just sort of a summary of the design. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you. Yes.
I say again. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on the matter?
We do. Thank you, Mayor. Our first speaker will be John Nicoletti.
Mr. Nicoletti, welcome.
Thank you, Nicole. Evening, Council. I'm here tonight as a member of the Nicoletti family because we are nearly 60-year friends with the Rosser family. And we've been down 100 trails. I think we know what's in the hearts of these folks, and we know their sincerity and love for this community has been, some of the finest, and it's kept a very close bond. I'm going to stand with the Rosser family. Not going to try and sound like this is a political issue. Really, when Cotton was inducted into the Pro Rodeo Hall of Fame, I thought that it's rare to know anybody that has been National Hall of Fame inductee. So I had to be there. It was great. It was an amazing experience. 7 people were inducted that day. Every one of them from different corners of America talked about Cotton like he was a next door neighbor and how many times he helped them wherever they lived. Later, he was inducted into the National Cowboy Hall of Fame. I think it's going to be especially rare to know anybody that has been inducted into 2 National Sports Hall of Fames. And we have one. And the entire way, the entire time, in most every city that we go to that honor the Rosser family and Cotton's achievements in a number of ways, and I think that the city of Marysville is trying hard to honor him here, he never gave up his stance for love of Marysville. It was a downtown business. When he opened his first downtown business on 3rd Street, a barbershop next door kept cutting hairs on Monday. You're not supposed to cut hair on Monday if you're a barber. The local barbers blew up that store and knocked everything on the shelves off. He didn't leave Marysville. He didn't quit business. He dug in deeper. So he moved himself over to another downtown Marysville location. He prospered this town for years and for decades. It's my view that seeing this located at 3rd and D is a location that includes all of our festivals, all of our parades, even includes our cattle drive. Nearly 100% of the people that would come down D Street and 3rd will know that individual, will know the importance. Where it's proposed, nearly 100% of the people driving by won't know. And I think the significance of that for me is the knowledge that the nearly 100% of the people that donated money towards this effort were individuals, not corporations. They were friends of Cotton. Cotton saw the prototype. Cotton had a sense that there was going to be a statue for him at some point. We hoped it happened while he was still alive. But he also had the knowledge that he would always and forever be a part of downtown Marysville. And for that reason, I'm just deeply disappointed in this location. I think he belongs where he's invested so much of his soul and his life, and so many of us that did it together with him.
Thank you, Mr. Nicoletti. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next speaker will be Rob Deach.
Hello, I'm Rob Deach. My father started in business on 5th Street. Where are we located? Right across from Cotton's Cowboy Corral, next to the Cortez Room. It was always a privilege and a pleasure to say, where's your business? You don't say 317 5th. No. I'm across from Cotton's Cowboy Corral. That's all I'm telling you. This didn't start. This statue idea came from Lauren Perkins, Rob Deach, Joe.
Nothing short of a legend. I guess we can do it. Spot. Over there. But it has to be part of this lot to be used. Ray, you never understand. Everything over and now Marysville, upright and Ray. Do not have that step. Please. I'll write it out and give it a proper key. There, hard out the balance of the dirt. You know, that does it justice. This magnitude, community, not doing justice. And lower in the beat.
Thank you.
Hopefully,
Thank you. Mr. Deach, you've made your point. Thank you. Thank you very much. About that. Madam Clerk.
No further speakers, Mayor.
Thank you, ma'am. Public comment is done on this matter. Now let's see. I don't mind leading off if somebody, with no objection. Objection. Well, here we are. I recall a meeting. Well, first of all, Lauren Perkins, one of the folks referenced, Mr. Deach. Dear friend of mine, he first cut my hair when I was 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, and he was a brand new barber. We go way, way back. And I know he's disappointed in this. And frankly, I'm very much in favor of the location, Washington Square. And it's strained our relationship. It hasn't strained it that much. We're friends. But here we are. We're at the narrow end of the funnel. Typically, ideas come in up here, and the idea for First Street was first promoted. My own sense of that, I walked out there day one, and Mr. Councilman Gilchrist got cross with me when I looked around and said, well, this is suboptimal. No one's going to see it. No one's going to drive by and see this thing, and it's right across the street from the ugliest blue fence in town. And And so we got to look at something else. And over time, we ended up in a meeting with members of the Rosser family and others discussing the placement and the terms of managing the city's involvement with the location. And I'd suggested the Washington Square location. And I forget who from the Rosser group said, well, that was a location that they thought of early on, particularly with the prominence of the flag and the history of Cotton Rosser and the American flag. I mean, they're like one and the same. And it's a wonderful location. I'm completely for it. I was out there with our consultant and Councilman Gilchrist, and the idea of having Cotton wave at all the passersby. There'll be tens of thousands a day that Cotton Rosser will be recognized by tens of thousands of people every day. That seems very fitting. I'm very much in favor of that location. And I'm sad that here at the narrow end of the funnel, these objections are being made, or other suggestions, and the suggestion that what is being proposed is criminal, which is that's not a useful way to approach these things. But here we are. I'm very much in favor of that location and would look to other comments or a motion. Sir.
To the chair. So I know many of the families that sit in this room right now, a lot of them go back multiple generations. Ms. Rosser, I knew your dad briefly, but I really know your Uncle Lee and Bonnie and other members of the family much better than I knew your dad. And unfortunately, this topic has become politicized over recent weeks. And I understand everybody's desire to want this monument to be in their preferred location. And I've got to ask you a question, and you, Ms. Rosser, can answer with a head nod or a yeehaw or however you want to answer it. I've made the comment over the last couple of weeks that I want this to go where the family wants it. Because and I don't expect there to be a statue from anybody from my family in the near future, but if it was a family member,
keep working, we'll see.
Yeah. If it was my family member, grandfather, father, brother, mother, sister, etc., then I would want it to go to what meant the most for the family, what I would believe to be the most valuable place for the individual that isn't here to speak his voice on it. And you represent him. And so it might be a hard question to answer, but I need to hear it from you. Do you want it in Washington Square Park? And the three choices are the Plaza Park on First, the park on Third and D, and Washington Square Park. Thank you for answering. I appreciate that. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Gilchrist.
So it's been a privilege and an honor to work on this project from the beginning. And Joey Barr came to me and said, we're going to bulldoze your little park over there unless you have some suggestions. And, I jumped at the chance to stop him from bulldozing. I just envisioned him, going out on his own and doing things. And it empowered me to get involved in this project. And through the years that we've been working on this, through various committees, et cetera, the bottom line is, in my industry of design and architecture, happy wife, happy life. And it's so important that the family have a place to put this beautiful statue. And it was a eye-opening experience to let go of 14 designs that were designed before the question of its location was even challenged or suggested or brought up. I had to constantly refer to the most important book we had, which is the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, which we paid for and we must adhere to, and how to evaluate properties when looking at the future of Marysville, which, by the way, when Cotton arrived here in the 1950s, it was a different town. And so the design evolution can continue. The most important thing about this project was to ensure that cotton looked like cotton, okay? And I have it on good faith from a reliable source that he does. And that was the most important thing. Things can be moved all the time. And this is the appropriate place at the appropriate time to do this. I just have to mention to you. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to work with you.
Any other comments or emotion? Sir.
I want to thank everybody that got up and spoke, including the Rosser family. When this first came about, I think we all thought it was an amazing idea, including me. And I was sold on the First Street piece of property, thinking that was down in the historic part. That would be an amazing spot. I'm very conflicted because both arguments are, I don't want to say arguments, both proposals have a very strong merit to them. So although I can see it being downtown as being a lot more personalized to the community, but being up on 10th and E, a lot less personalized, but a lot more inviting to tens of thousands of people. So although because of the confliction that I'm having here, I think the only way I can draw upon a direction is by going with what the Rosser family has asked for.
Any other comments or motion?
So every council member seems to have their own projects, and this was not one of mine. I always say I can build almost anything, but I can't pick a color to save my life. So when it comes to certain things and designs and so forth, I left it to the other council members. I remember when I heard about this, I loved the idea. I loved everything about the rodeos and what it did and what the Rosser family did with the whole city. And I waited for information to come in our direction. I didn't push it. Couldn't get involved in those committees because of Brown Act considerations and so forth. But I will have to acquiesce to the family. If the family wants it there at this particular time, I'd like to put a motion that we adopt as presented to the council.
We have a motion before we track to second. I recall the time I actually met Cotton. I'm trying to remember the exact reason for the celebration out in front of the store a couple of years ago. Yeah, it was Cotton Rusher Day. And I researched, forgive me for forgetting the detail. That you've reminded me. And I did a lot of research for my comments. And every time I unearthed another accomplishment that wonderful man delivered to rodeo and to people enjoying rodeo, I was so impressed. And it's obvious to me, it was obvious to me, he's clearly a national personality and he must have an international reputation because rodeo isn't just restricted to the United States. And I was excited to be there and chat with him. And I even bought a cowboy hat for the occasion. I have a collection, actually. I just added it to the collection so I could do that. And I bought it at Cotton's. Thank you very much. And I'm thrilled to be part of this. I was proud to write a check when Lauren and the rest of the group who started this off started raising money. And then once the Rossers had taken a super active role in getting this thing across the finish line, they had put together a program where there's matching dollars up to a pretty significant amount. And I increased my contribution to $5,000 in order to be part of that. I was so excited by it. And I was excited. I was still remembering meeting your dad and how much he impressed me. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Oh, you want to clear up that one item? Yes, please.
I just want to ask one question on how is, Jim, I think you can answer this. How will or can the general plan and the specific plan, are we going to have any kind of an issue here at some point, or are we going to have that in the general plan as that will be a permanent?
So,
do you know what I'm trying to ask? I'm not sure. I know the surrounding area is what we're doing on the general plan, but I'm not exactly sure in that one particular part.
So with our general plan, we will look at that park area and determine if the direction is to continue to keep it as that type of land use. And I don't anticipate changes in that corner. But also the agreement allows for the movement of the statue. And if for some reason we needed to move it or there was a desire to move it, there is that ability to do that. If we choose not to move the statue into a visible location that the Rossers agree with, then they have the ability to take the statue back. I do not anticipate a change to that corner of the park other than enhancing that area of the park. And so I don't anticipate the statue moving anywhere. I'm not sure if that answers your question. The general plan doesn't really get into that detail.
Okay.
There are no plans to change its use.
Pardon me?
There are no plans now to change the use of that property.
Well, I want to make sure if we're doing this, that there's not a possibility that we can. And I guess that isn't possible, but it would have to come back to the council no matter what.
Well,
any change of use, correct?
That would be, I guess, my comment on the general plan. Ultimately, the council will decide via vote what the general plan entails, and my recommendation will be to keep that corner intact the way it is with the statue there, and perhaps enhance the park for those passive type recreational activities.
All right, thank you.
We have a motion. I'm looking for a second.
Second the motion.
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Madam Clerk, that was unanimous. Rosser family and friends, thank you all for being here. So meaningful. Bless you. Thank you. I'll let everybody clear out. Bruce, would you like a 5-minute recess? We're going to have a brief recess. These motherfuckers really kick their ass.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.
2023 for second reading and consideration for adoption. And then 3, and here's the trick, waive the first and second reading of the ordinance authorizing the changes to Chapter 11 by adding Section 11.09 of the Marysville Municipal Code as set forth in the appended matters. And we have the pleasure here of Mr. Vincenzo Carazzo, Public Works Director, City of Marysville, to present this matter. Sir.
Great. Well, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Vincenzo Carazzo, your Public Works Director. And I have here John Mallon, our City Engineer, available for this item. First, I want to start off is what is a street cut moratorium? So a moratorium is a ban, and we're just making a ban on cutting up our streets, trenching up our streets. When utility lines want to come in and put a fiber optics line or a water line or a gas line, they have to cut up our streets to trench, dig it up, and put the pipe in there. And what we're trying to say is we don't want that. And so here's a couple of items. One is 5th Street rehab. We just finished that in June of this year at a cost of about $3.3 million. Well, tomorrow, if a utility line wants to come in and trench it, they come to the city and ask for an encroachment permit, and we simply allow them to trench and cut up 5th Street. We don't want that. It's a nice road, beautiful. Let's not do that. So the moratorium will be for 5 years. We want new streets. Don't touch our streets. And there's a list of the streets. Together with the city engineer, we came up with a list. One of them was 5th Street rehab. We are starting our 2023 citywide paving project. That's at a cost of $3.3 million. Again, utility companies, developers, please don't touch our new streets. And in 2025-26, CITICOG has programmed the phase 2 of East 22nd Street. So we're starting this year, the first phase of East 22nd Street. In 2 years, we have the money for the rest of East 22nd Streets. Again, please don't touch our streets for 5 years. So that's what the item is. We need a new code section in our municipal code that basically prevents staff from issuing encroachment permits for newly paved roads. 5 years for pavement, new pavement rehabs, 3 years for simple things like slurry seals, preventive maintenance. So essentially, we're looking at protecting over $10 million worth of paving with the 5th Street this year and also the next couple of years. So this will allow us to tell the developers and utility companies we're protecting our $10 million investment. Here's the list. If you need to do maintenance, plan ahead, do it before we pave new streets, and ongoing, check with our city engineer. We'll have new streets in the pipelines that they can schedule their maintenance work around it. So many other cities have done this. 3 good examples is the city of Elk Grove, Sacramento County, and Sonoma County. They have street cut moratoriums. So it's very common in California municipalities to have street cut moratoriums. With that, do you want to add anything or?
Thank you.
Questions?
I believe our city manager wants to join in the presentation.
Okay.
Actually, Vincenzo already mentioned the item of other cities, this being a norm in other cities.
We have to have public comment first. Okay, items presented.
Oh, okay.
Okay, this matter is now open. It's for public comment. Public hearing is now open. Madam Clerk.
No speakers on this item, Mayor.
Marvelous. Public hearing now closed. I'm supposed to gavel. Anyway, okay. I believe Councilman Belza had something to suggest.
Yeah, a couple questions on this. Is there provisions for an emergency clause? I see the head nod. Yes, that answers the question.
Yes.
And I'm in favor of this. When First Street got repaved in front of Stewart's, PG&E went in there less than 6 months later, cut up, and my phone was ringing off the hook. Why didn't they do this first? And then we're cutting up new asphalt, et cetera. It makes perfect sense to me to have this in place and giving them ample time to schedule their maintenance ahead of time in those streets is perfect. So I'm in favor of this.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Just a couple things. One, I'm curious how you got the 5-year, 3-year.
Right.
And secondly, I understand you have this emergency thing, but I don't want to cut into these streets, but I'm not sure how the practicality of it is going to be when take the other utility companies out of it, who were saying, get your butt in there and get it done before we do it. But we've got one of the worst pieces of infrastructure out there in our sewers. And so I'm just trying to figure out how practical this is going to be. And where, how you came up with a 5-year and 3-year. Sure. Those are also I'm curious on.
Great. To answer your question, Vice Mayor, I've contacted Cal Cities or the League of California Cities and engaged their assistance, and they did a survey of other cities, and it's standard pretty much 5 years for overlays and rehabs and 3 years for slurry seals. So we pretty much just followed what other cities have done for those types of years.
What's the point of having a time period at all? I guess is my
right.
question. Why wouldn't it be permanent with the exception of emergency?
Oh, good question. So I don't know if you remember, maybe 2 meetings ago, I presented the famous chart graph with the pavement condition index and the time. And usually the first 5 years is when you have your best pavement. I mean, it stays up there and then it starts to drop precipitously. So if you kept it for a really long time, it doesn't help because the street's already dying anyways. It's already failing. But for the first 5 years is when you want to keep it. Don't cut it, because once you cut it, you mess up the uniformity of it, and it'll fail even faster. So there's a certain time frame where we say, you know what, just go ahead and cut it and patch it up, because we know that it's going to fail within 20 years or so, or whatever lifetime is, and we'll just have to repave it.
Okay, so then tell me the practicality of it when we have such a bad infrastructure of the sewer.
All right, sewer. So we have, for our capital improvement project, we have a sewer project coming up on Aldridge. That's a really bad road anyways. So we won't be having this moratorium apply to us because it's not a new road. When we do have a new road, such as the pavement project coming, the city engineer already went and looked at the sewer lines and said, you know what, it's not such bad that we can last 5 years. So before we pave, we definitely want to look at our utilities and also tell the other utilities, hey, if your sewer or if your lines are bad, go ahead and fix it. A Street is a good example. Cal Waters looked at it. They heard that we were going to pave A Street, and they said, you know what, we have a water main that we want to fix, and we delayed that section. We're telling our contractors to start it next spring or next year after Cal Water gets in there and does it. So it's also a tool to warn the utility companies, we're coming, but let us know that you have a project, and we might delay our paving of that.
And we're going to do the same with our utilities, though, to make sure before we start laying over it.
Right.
We're going to look and see what we have in there.
Yes.
We cambered all those lines, didn't we?
Yeah. I'll get to Bruce's first question about the time frame, and Vincenzo was kind of elaborating on it. That's what the League of Cities view. But the standard for paving is usually you figure on it 10-year interval for some sort of either slurry seal or major maintenance, and 20-year considered useful life of a pavement surface. And I think that what they did is they just split that 10-year in half and said, if you're halfway through before you're going to do major maintenance, that's when you would, basically exclude people out of it. But and it is a little bit arbitrary. I mean, some agencies go higher, but Yuba County's basically adopted a 5-year on their roads. That's something they've more recently done, and it's actually become a problem for OPUD because they just overlaid a bunch of streets, and OPUD had some bad water lines in them, and now the OPUD's trying to figure out how to replace the water mains with the moratorium in place. So that was a little bit of a coordination issue for them. But we on the streets that we are doing this year, we hired a camera inspection company that went out and they cameraed all the storm drain and sewer lines in all the streets that we are scheduled to do this year. And some of the ones that were the phase 2 for 22nd, we did it at the same time while we were TV in 22nd Street. And we didn't find any major defects or any areas of concern that we would do it. But obviously your concern is probably individual property owners' laterals, which often fail. And that's the hardest part, is because that's usually the person with the least amount of resources to do additional work. And that's where I think the emergency ordinance would come in place and try and figure out a way to accommodate those people. Because that's also something that we really can't see, because when you TV the main, I mean, all you see is where the lateral is. You don't know the condition of the property owner's lateral off the main and whether or not there's been some sort of tree root. Usually it's trees or some sort of other intrusion into the pipe at the joints that creates a problem.
Microphone.
Would it be too impractical to camera those as we decide to move forward?
Yeah, the problem with cameraing laterals, it becomes a real issue because some property owners don't have cleanouts and they're lateral, or they don't know where the cleanouts are and they're buried, or there's a variety of issues. And then or they even know the location of the lateral going into their building. So it becomes real problematic. I know PG&E actually, when they do borings in the street, they have what's called the cross bore prevention plan. And they try and TV every utility in the street, including laterals, before they bore, like when they're boring a new gas main. And then they TV it after they've completed to make sure that they didn't bore through them. And they always have difficulty with all the laterals. And we did gain a bunch of information on the northwest or northeast quadrant of the town up there, where they did have to replace the gas main with boring over the past 2 years. PG&E provided us with all their cameraing that they did on the mains in that area. So it's like Val and Hobart and all those, Johnson, Nadine, a bunch of the streets up in that area. So
okay, thank you.
Edwin, just real quick, sorry. We all are also working on funding to do a citywide camera inspection of all of our utilities. So that will probably provide us a complete information so that we are not shooting ourselves in the foot.
That'll help on the Ellis Lake thing, won't it? Yeah.
Actually had an interesting observation. Covalad Schools in the process of doing their project over there, and they were tying into the storm drain. And I went out and did the inspection on it yesterday, and it surprised me that it's a large diameter storm drain pipe that was clay, which most of them are reinforced concrete pipe or concrete pipe, and it was in really good shape, but it had like 8 to 10 inches of sediment built up in the bottom of the pipe. And it looks like it's continuous along the whole run of the pipe through the project, which kind of surprised me, because typically storm drain, you get a little bit of velocity from big storms or something like that, and it tends to clean out the bottom of the pipes. But yeah, this section had quite a bit of buildup in it, which we'll probably find areas like that. And there could be a reason there's an obstruction somewhere in the pipe or something like that if you do a downstream cameraing. But yeah, that was the first time I'd seen that much sediment in a large diameter storm drain.
You had a comment. He was next.
Thank you.
That's what Hudson.
So I'm glad you have the emergency clause in there as well. And you kind of answered my question about boring, because I've done boring before and so forth. But I mean, in the emergency clause, are we being restrictive on how big the boring holes are going to be? Or I'm also kind of curious, that's a two-part question here, is that I'm happy to see this come in, because it does stink when you see new roads get torn up. And I'm super excited about roads, by the way, being down here in Marysville. One of those, whatever. So, yeah. Is there something in there to also take care of any sort of, like an emergency type situation, standardization? Because whenever they do a cut and a patch now, they don't do very good compact of the soil, and then they put in their 3-4 inches of asphalt and packed it down. And then here we are a month later, it's lo and behold 2 inches below the rest of the street. Do we have something in there for standardization of that?
Actually, we actually have a standard detail in the city that provides for the contractor when they do a utility trench cut, that they cut the original trench, compact it, they leave it for a minimum of 30 days. Then they come back, overcut it, what's called a T-cut. So you cut a foot beyond the trench, you do the final paving, and you do the compaction. We've had that detail for a while. The part of the problem is enforcement and inspection.
I was about to say that.
And that's where we've been stepping it up with utilities in recent times to try and do that. And that's also part of what Vincenzo and Jim and I were discussing with this moratorium. The moratorium is more of a overall statement, but like you're saying, for an emergency scenario, you look at it on a case by case basis. It's like, how big is the cut? Is it on the center of the road? Is it on the side of the road? So you have some discretion to make the best feasible for the person making the cut and for the overall product of the city.
I'd thank you for that. And I'd like to make sure that, if we could talk about it in the future, making sure that we do enforce that detail that is already in existence with anything done on this moratorium or in the future of any of our roads right now, because it does make an issue when I don't believe it's inspected. And then here we are.
Sometimes we run into the issue with some of the utility companies assume that they have a blanket encroachment permit with the city.
Sure.
So they just go out there and cut in the street and not necessarily come in and pull the encroachment permit prior to doing the work.
Okay.
And we've slowly been reeling them in over the past few years on that because, all the utilities have been adhering pretty well to getting the permit prior to doing the work and not performing any work without it. And then performing compaction tests on the backfill and then, doing a better job of patching.
I'm glad that eventually over the next couple of years, we're going to do East 22nd all the way to Marysville High School, because there has been some recent sewer work that was done in that area where they overlaid asphalt as soon as they packed it down, like within a day. So it's going to become an issue later. I'm not going to dwell on this anymore. Thank you. I think this is a great idea and what we got going here. And, I have a motion, but I know that there's more comments. So
I'd like to join in the thrust of your comments and suggestions there, Councilman. I wrote down quality control ? Now, you do have a process that's prescribed, but that process doesn't actually mean they're going to come out with good quality. I would suggest that we look at an amendment, we can pass this. I would suggest we look at an amendment where the city has absolute or as much discretion as our city attorney can work up to approve on a quality control basis. Because what you have is a process, but that process is just a process. We know it's not going to produce good quality. It's not going to produce consistent good quality unless we hammer them and require an inspection. So I would suggest there be consideration to an amendment, a downstream after y'all think about it. Maybe it's a bad idea, I don't know, but where it's not just the process, but the outcome.
I think we do have an inspection process that the city engineer goes out there and inspects it.
But I want quality control, and if you're not happy with them, make them do it again.
Yeah,
and let them know, because they'll learn to do it right.
A couple PG&E, jobs. Generally, their contractor's pretty good, but like everybody mentions First Street, we had notified PG&E on First Street prior to doing the overlay project, and their gas reg station monitoring system, they could not get their project together in time for us to overlay the street. And then we told them that prior to them doing any work, they were going to have to expand the limits of the pavement repair to match the limits of the crosswalk and some of the other features out there so that it's a more uniform patch.
But my point is, it's our street.
Oh yeah.
And we want it returned to perfect condition, or as perfect as
and they
possible.
did do a good job. The problem was that it took them 9 months after they completed the work to finish.
And we have to send a message that we're real hard on this. And once the word gets out, they'll understand it. But no more. I mean, I doubt you're playing Mr. Nice Guy with them, but I'd encourage you to be firm and stern. in making sure we have very high quality. Brad, I'm glad you brought that up. Councilman Gilchrist, I believe you wanted to share.
Yeah, I'm also reading up there on the screen. Fiber optic. So the trenching for the upcoming fiber optic project we have coming on, is that's along the edge?
You mentioned that. I wrote that note down. I want to check and make sure we coordinate with Sci-Fi on any of those jobs that we're paving. They have minimal intrusion. I mean, they're typically doing it right at the curb.
Cool.
But probably a good idea to let them know
that in there.
They may have to do more work if they're digging it up after the fact.
Yet another email you have to CC in all of your correspondence.
That said, I got a motion. I'd like to make a motion as presented by staff for this moratorium of asphalt.
I'll second it.
That's second.
Aye.
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 Great. Thank you.
I want to say I'm thankful this meeting's almost over. Oh, never mind. I'll come back.
Yeah.
Oh, here we have fresh off the press. I can't do anything right. Okay, committee appointment, Mr. Vice Mayor. I believe you have an appointment to make.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Unfortunately, my cemetery commissioner, Craig Carberry, had passed away. And so there was a empty position. And I have had a vacancy for quite a while, but I've had somebody that has shown interest and wants to have this spot. And I will say I am not familiar with this person, but I believe she has been a portion of the volunteer work out there, if I'm not mistaken, correct? And so I would like to give her the opportunity to continue on more of a involved basis as my appointee, and that is Phyllis Smith. And I just want to thank her for putting in an application for it and for all of her dedication that she has done for the history of Marysville.
Presume he has absolute discretion on this. City Attorney, thank you. That is a done deal. Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. We will now move to committee reports, comments, requests. Councilman Belza.
Want to comment on the Coach Rossellini group. They were here earlier and Stuart brought them up and applauded them. It's great to see Adopt a Park continuing on. I've got supposed to have a meeting here within the next week or so with another group interested in Adopt a Park. I hear rumoring. I don't know if rumoring is a good thing to talk about in meetings like this, but possibly Lions Grove with an adoption plan. And it's just good to see the community stepping in and taking ownership of these different areas of their city. And so I hope that it continues for years to come, right? Some of these things get going and then lose momentum. I'm not talking about Rosalie's, I'm just talking about adoptive parks and, all those different things. But that's encouraging. I don't really have any particular committee updates, but it's good to be wrapping up summer, and so we can get busy and in full swing again here in the council. So, and a lot of good progress, a lot of good movement. Glad to see some conclusion on the Cotton Roster statue. Glad to see Ellis Lake being addressed. These are good things and good items to get behind us. So keep up the good work, everybody from the staff. We're doing good. I'm hearing good things from folks in the city. So that's all.
Councilman Gilchrist.
I have no committee reports at this time. I am going to have Johnny Burke with the Sutter Yuba Homeless Coalition reach out to our city manager so that he can give us a report and give us from his perspective the numbers of the residentially challenged individuals in our community, what services are available and what they're doing, etc. Soon. So that's it. And thank goodness we have landed cotton. I think it's very exciting, and everyone has been doing a great job, city staff wise. So is this morphing into council comments also, or just committee reports?
All of the above.
So I would like an update from our city manager from Public Works on streetlights and streetlight repair. I know we've been very busy, but I do have a constituent who would like me to ask the status of our street light bulb replacement project. It's been going on for quite some time, and I'd just like to check in with city staff on the status of that.
You can
That's
handle that offline.
Okay, very good. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Hudson.
Well, I don't have any real committee reports to talk about here because we have come off a little bit of a summer hiatus. I appreciate a little bit of a break. So with that being said, on just in general, I am excited that we got roads coming up here real soon. I thank you, Vincenzo, for presenting more paperwork to give, and I have constituents and individuals that come into my watering hole and ask on a regular basis about, the streets and roads, especially since they all got this in their sewer bill here this last week. So it's good to have some more pamphlets to pass out and knock on doors and so forth. So looking forward to all that, and thank you for the memorandum. I'm sorry I missed the cleanup of Adopt Park this last weekend. I was still out of town, but I was super excited to see the momentum and just people talking about it. So I'm glad it was also brought on the agenda tonight and talked about, because it seems like in the past 2 weeks that I've been gone, I come back and it looks just maybe a tad bit worse. So I'm, again, the lake has not been my project, so I asked the people who are running it. I love the idea of just going out there with skimmers or my jet boat and stir it up and scrape it up and start doing something so we can at least show that we're moving in that direction.
Put a net over it.
Well,
Exactly.
something along those lines. But I'm glad to hear that staff's got plans, and I'm waiting to hear back from Dan Bergman and so forth, and see what the best plan is, and let's move forward. Thank you guys for everything.
Thank you, sir. Vice Mayor.
Just a couple quick things. Not a lot has changed lately. We do now have new permanent directors for RWMA and Yuba City Transit. They are both in place. We've only had them for a meeting or two each, but I think there were some good choices made there. Obviously, the lake, the mayor and I are involved with that committee, but we've hashed through it all tonight, and I think we're going the right direction. Rec department wise, I'm glad to hear that I guess Dan and the city manager have met with Dave Cheadle. That started out as sort of an adopt a park, and now I guess it's moving into something somewhat different, but I'm glad to see there's some ongoing communication there of how we're going to handle that. Thank you.
Here, may I add?
Please.
Thank you. Sorry. Because of the little hiatus that we've had and so forth, I forgot about some things. Some weeks back, we had a large incident here in the city of Marysville, and I just want to thank our departments, the Marysville Fire Department, Marysville Police Department, Public Works, the Ice House Fire. That was all hands on deck type situation. And it was great to be able to show up there, and all I could do is bring a swamp cooler for the crew. But it was it was good to see Marysville PD working in conjunction tight with the fire department. It was good to see Public Works already out there with barricades and, you know, water bottles. And I guess you guys just luckily happened to buy a cache of Gatorade and water earlier that week. And so it was awesome to see the city roll and stroll together on a large incident. And I just want to say thanks. Thanks you guys for that. It was great to see. So everybody stepped up. I know the fire spent a long time on there. I know that there were a lot of officers there that were on overtime. There was a lot of officers doing a good job of blocking streets, even stopping me from coming in. Thankfully, she recognized me. So it was good. So thank you guys. Appreciate that and everything.
My first comment was on how fire, police, and public works did a great job on that. No, I'm going to say it again. I was so impressed, and I got by once things had calmed down a little bit, but there were still visible flames, but everything was well under control. I visited briefly with Chief Hegstrom without unduly disturbing him because he was busy doing a great job along with police and public works. I'm so fortunate. And I was thinking of y'all when I heard about the accident at East 22nd and Highway 20. And Mr. Shad shared with me some of the details of that. And those are the challenges you folks deal with. Obviously, a loss of life in a gruesome situation. And I'm certain everything was treated with the utmost of dignity. Tough job. God bless you all. Speaking of which, East 22nd and Highway 20 needs a stoplight. We need to talk about it to the state of California, Mr. Amerjeet, about doing something about that. That is a dangerous intersection, really dangerous intersection. And we shouldn't have to send our emergency resources out there to have to deal with things like that. That was a shame. We have a SACOG meeting, Sacramento Area Council of Governments. They are going on the road, and this Thursday at 10 o'clock, they will commence a regular meeting of the SACOG Board of Directors, of which I'm privileged to be a member, at the Peachtree Health Center in Linda. Like say that, Peachtree Health Center. Thank you. Peachtree Health Center in Linda, and the public is welcome. And I'll be there. Anybody else who wants to show up, you'll be welcome, and I'll make sure to greet you. Madam Clerk, do we have any council correspondence?
Thank you, Mayor. Adventure Church has invited council to their open house on Saturday, August 26th from 1 to 3 with the ribbon cutting at 2 p.m. That is a local church in Yuba City.
And very quickly, one more quick comment. And I wanted to thank Mr. Carroll, who goes by Sergeant Carroll when I see him most of the time. Your words were heard, and thank you for being here today. You bet. May I proceed? Okay. Mr. City Manager.
I have a few items, upcoming events, and Dan may have to help me with this. Mayor had mentioned the SACOG meeting. I believe they're doing a walk in the downtown area, starting at the Brick.
Yeah, so beginning at 8:30 at the Brick. They expect 53 people have RSVP'd from the Sacramento region, various jurisdiction leadership, including county supervisors and mayors and other city council members, as well as some SACOG staff will be attending. And they start at the Brick. It's about a 40-minute or a 30-minute walking tour that'll go downtown Marysville. And we have a guest speaker who's going to help with the tour, and that's Chuck Smith, who we heard tonight, and he's a local historian from the area. So we're looking forward to hosting that. And the Brick's putting together a pretty nice little spread so we'd invite everybody here, obviously, to join us too. That's on Thursday and it begins at 8:30 at the Brig. Yes, correct.
Also on the 17th at 5:30 at the 530 Event Center, Congressman LaMalfa will be doing a town hall.
Yep.
And wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. August 26th, Dancing with the Stars at Hard Rock Casino. Unfortunately, our chief is not going to be a contestant this year. He may be judging. Yes,
He's judging. Yeah.
September 6th, 10 o'clock a.m. ribbon cutting at the East Lake Park Complex. That will be a good event. And then tentatively on September 13th, 10 a.m. Street pavement project groundbreaking in East Marysville. We're still working on the location. Then September 15th, most of us know this, but 6 p.m. Sodbusters. And then the 17th, 16th, and 17th of September, the Stampede and Rodeo. So those are some of the events coming up. Projects, we're just winding down the sewer decommissioning project, the sewer pond decommissioning project. Just really paperwork at this point, I believe. We did receive a award through the American Public Works Association. The award is called the Potty Award, which seemed to be suitable for the project we were working on. Jennifer Stasinski accepted the award on the city's behalf. Next project, Gavin Park, is in progress. I mentioned earlier, mostly demolition at this point, but once we get all the dirt removed, then we'll start putting things back. Moving along quite well. The street projects we already mentioned, John and Vincenzo and I talked about that today, and we're still looking good to be starting actual work in early to mid-September. Don't know exactly which streets they're going to start on yet, but we're hoping it's the 22nd Street portion of it. We'll keep you informed. We are also beginning the design and cost estimates for a project in East Marysville sewer line rehab. And I think I have the streets right. Aldridge, Bottler, Kaminsky area. And likely are going to be attempting to move the sewer lines out of people's backyards and onto the street where it would be more appropriate. That would be funded through sewer bond funds. It's been a problematic area, so that would be a good thing. We already mentioned or had a lot of discussion on Ellis Lake. That's one of our priorities. I would recommend, and I doubt if I'll get any objection, but perhaps Mr. Bergman give a update on that regularly, like at least monthly, to council, so that everybody knows where we're at with that process. And then last of all, project-wise, there's many more, but of note, our chiefs have been working on the fire radio coverage project. They, based on Chief Hegstrom's input, they have been looking at a broader area of coverage with funding from other agencies to enhance that project. If you want more information on that, we can talk offline. I'm guessing you may want to discuss that, Brad, but that project's moving along. I just want to make everybody aware that we haven't forgotten about that one. And then just last thing, I had forwarded some emails. We are continuing to push our efforts on traffic enforcement and blight enforcement. And it's keeping our police department very busy. There doesn't seem to be a loss of opportunity to write traffic citations for speeding and stop sign running, but we will continue that effort. And I believe the chief is going to be monitoring some of those citations that turned into larger infractions through the DA's office to see what the result of prosecution. Moving right along. That's all I have.
To the chair, one quick addition. We're putting all these dates out for all these different events coming on, and I don't want us to get past the fact the MPOA is having their spaghetti feed on September 16th.
Okay.
And that's going to be at the Elks Lodge.
Okay. Okay. So Dan has one other event coming up, and I'll let him expound on that.
The city manager is referring to the Taste of Yuba-Sutter, and we're excited to announce as of 4:05 p.m. tonight that the Yuba-Sutter Chamber of Commerce Taste of Yuba-Sutter event will be held for the first time in its history in the city of Marysville at Bryant Field Park. So congratulations, and we're looking forward to hosting. So great job. So yeah, I did want to announce that. And can I just make one more quick announcement? I know I have a list, but I just really quick. The Yuba-Sutter Brew Fest is going to be on September 30th. Expect about 1,500 people to attend the Brew Fest, and that will be also at Bryant Field Park. So looking forward to those two events.
Keep the police in the other part of town, will you, that day?
Did you have an announcement on B
So
Street?
I did want to get clarification. Is it Bryant Field or Bryant Park? Okay.
Madam Clerk. We've got to talk with our public relations executive as soon as we close this meeting.
I would like
I've
to
got
do
to.
Good.
We need to talk. If I may, Madam Clerk, please confirm September 5th is the date of the next meeting, because that's not what it says here. Okay, our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, September 5th. Thank you. It's Tuesday, September 5th at 6 p.m. We're adjourned. Yes.
Yuba-Sutter.live's local government live streams are presented by Plumas Lake Self-Storage in Plumas Lake, where lifelong local residents are helping other residents keep things safe, providing indoor storage units, outdoor RV and vehicle parking, moving supplies, and Penske truck rentals. Details at plumaslakeselfstorage.com.